Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine war breaking news update. I say breaking news, it actually came out last night. I was a little bit busy, unable to do the video last night. So what are we talking about? Tomahawk cruise missiles, something that we've been keeping a close eye on because these are very capable missiles that Ukraine could really do with. The Pentagon has given the US the green light, given Trump the green light to deliver these from US stocks to Ukraine. But there are some caveats to apply here and some very interesting nuggets of information concerning when the green light was given, which doesn't bode well for Ukraine in some ways. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, the Pentagon has given the White House a green light to provide Ukraine with BGM-109 Tomahawk land cruise attack cruise missiles. They have a range of over 1,000 miles, so that's 1,600 kilometers or so. Really, I guess Yelabuga, the drone manufacturing facility, is about that range from Ukraine, depending. So I would have thought you would just about be able to reach Yelabuga, which is super important. It depends, I guess, where you're launching them from exactly. But anyway, the Pentagon determined it would not negatively impact US munition stockpiles, leaving the final decision regarding the transfer in President Donald J. Trump's hands, according to 3 American and European officials familiar with the matter who spoke with CNN. So we're going to look at the CNN article in a minute, but there are a couple of key pieces of information here. So Jimmy Russian says the Pentagon has assessed that giving US Tomahawks to Ukraine would not negatively impact US stockpiles. But Michael White says the assessment predated the call with Putin. Is that telephone call with Putin? So the green light was given. It looked like the US was going to give Tomahawks. We had all those hints given by Trump himself. No qualifications attached to what he was saying about the Tomahawks. Then he had that phone call with Vladimir Putin. Then he came out and said, "Oh no, it looks like we're going to need these missiles ourselves," and blah blah blah. And people were wondering what was going on, and it looked like Putin had just convinced Trump out of it. Well, that's likely the case because actually it appears that the Pentagon had given the green light to these Tomahawks prior to that phone call. So in other words, this is potentially almost irrelevant. This was already the case that Trump had been given the green light, and then he went against that green light to not give Tomahawks to Ukraine. In other words, as the Pentagon clearly indicates, it's down to the Trump, or the CNN indicates it's down to Trump to make the final ultimate decision there. Well, he's already made that, and ultimately he doesn't want Ukraine to get Tomahawks because something that Putin told him. So leaked now for reasons I only assume need no explanation, says the journalist Michael Weiss. Here we have Ruth Diamond saying what this story says is that the Pentagon told the White House that the US could spare the Tomahawks before Trump told Zelensky the US couldn't spare them. So the White House made a political decision not to help Ukraine and lied about the reason. Business as usual then. So, you could see this as really good news, what's coming out from CNN, that, hey, the Americans have green lighted Tomahawks going to Ukraine. Or you could see this as very bad news, that Trump is aligning himself more personally and the White House more specifically with the Kremlin rather than with the Pentagon. And this goes back to my thesis that you've got two worldviews competing with each other within the American government. You've got the White House Heritage Foundation worldview of isolationism and essentially anti-Ukrainism. And you've got the Pentagon, some intelligence services operating in a traditional manner where Russia are recognized as bad guys. And sometimes the Pentagon gets the upper hand in the narrative, in the communication of that narrative. But most of the time, it looks like the White House get the upper hand. And this appears to be exemplified by the story of these Tomahawks. So let's read this CNN article. It's not that long. Pentagon cleared giving Ukraine long-range Tomahawk missiles, leaving the final decision to Trump, which he then made. That's my addition at the end. The Pentagon, it says, has given the White House a green light to provide Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles after assessing that it would not negatively impact US stockpiles, leaving the final political decision in President Donald Trump's hands, according to 3 US and European officials familiar with the matter. Trump said earlier this month during a working lunch with Ukrainian President Zelensky in the White House that he would rather not provide the missiles to Ukraine because, quote, "We don't want to be giving away things that we need to protect our country." The Joint Staff informed the White House of its assessment earlier this month, just before Trump met with Zelensky, who has been pushing for the missiles to more effectively target oil and energy facilities deep inside Russia. Tomahawks have a range of around 1,000 miles. The assessment buoyed the US European allies who believe that the US now has fewer excuses not to provide the missiles, 2 European officials said. Trump also said just days before meeting Zelensky that the US has, quote, a lot of Tomahawks that it could potentially give to Ukraine. So, in other words, this is me talking now, the Trump narrative completely changed. It went from we have loads of Tomahawk missiles, and there was no qualification of the claims about Tomahawks, and we're making a decision on whether Ukraine can receive these, etc., etc., etc. Then you had the phone call. Then you had the qualification of the claim and the refusal to give Ukraine the missiles. So, completely came down to that phone call with Putin. The US and European officials were surprised, therefore, when Trump dramatically changed his tune days later, saying during opening remarks at a White House working lunch with Zelensky that the US needs the Tomahawks. He then told Zelensky behind closed doors that the US would not be providing them, at least not yet. Trump's decision came one day after he spoke by phone to Russian President Vladimir Putin, who told Trump that Tomahawks couldn't hit major Russian cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, would have no significant impact on the battlefield, but would damage the US-Russia relationship, CNN has reported. The White House and Pentagon did not return requests for comment. Trump has not taken the missiles off the table altogether, sources previously told CNN, and the administration has drawn up plans to provide them to Ukraine quickly should Trump give the order. Okay, back to me again. So I guess the most hopeful positioning here, because essentially this news doesn't change anything. We're back to Trump has still said no. But if we're going to be hopeful, Trump can change his mind. He can spin on a sixpence, this man. So that mind is fickle and can be changed very easily. And one might have justification in thinking that he will allow Tomahawks to go to Ukraine, given some other change of variable, some other, I don't know, the wind change of direction or something. So Trump has also grown so frustrated in recent weeks with Putin's unwillingness to seriously consider peace talks that he approved new US sanctions on Russian oil firms last week and scrapped for now a planned meeting with Putin in Budapest to discuss Ukraine. While the Pentagon doesn't have concerns about stockpiles, US defense officials are still grappling with how Ukraine would train and deploy the missiles, officials said. There are still several operational issues that would need to be resolved for Ukraine to be able to use the missiles effectively, the sources added. One outstanding question is how Ukraine would fire the missiles if the US provided them. Tomahawks are most commonly launched from surface ships or submarines, but Ukraine's navy is severely depleted, so the missiles would likely need to be launched on land. The Marine Corps and Army have developed ground-based launchers that could be provided to Ukraine, but even if the US did not want to provide the launchers, European officials believe Ukraine could figure out a workaround. One official pointed out the Ukrainian engineers were able to develop a workaround to use the UK-based Storm Shadow missiles, which were originally designed to be used by modern NATO aircraft and had to be integrated into Ukraine's aging Soviet-era jet fleet. In a post on X earlier this week, Zelensky said Ukraine hopes to expand its long-range capabilities by the end of this year so the war can end on fair terms for the country. Quote, global sanctions and our pinpoint precision are practically syncing up to end this war on terms fair to Ukraine, he wrote. All deep strike goals must be fully locked in by year's end, including expansion of our long-range footprint. It's a really significant thing to say, by the way. So there are hopes that lots of things are going to happen by the end of this year. Flamingos are going to come online at scale. Neptune, Chrome 2, these missiles, ballistic missiles they're talking about as well. These missiles that Ukraine does have access to, but we're unsure as to the scale of production. And also the long-range drones and whatnot. So Ukraine potentially had a really big night of drone strikes last night, but it looks like it might have been over-egged by some Russian sources dooming about the number of drones, but still really significant strikes. We had power cuts in Moscow region. We had pipelines that were struck in, again, the Moscow region. So I think it could have been a good night for the Ukrainians. A very strong statement being made there, which, what the Ukrainians, I think, want to do is put Russia under enough pressure that the US can see who's kind of winning or who might have a good chance of winning. I don't think Trump will give Tomahawks to Ukraine if he thinks Ukraine is in such a bad situation that it would just be wasting those Tomahawks, like giving them to a losing side. Trump is all about backing a winner. So if Ukraine can show themselves to be robust enough with their other air munitions, then they've got a better chance of receiving Tomahawks, I would have thought. That's just my speculation, though. So anyway, here's the news. Pentagon's has greenlit these missiles, but the green lighting of them took place before Trump had a phone call with Putin. So that fits in line with why Trump was so positive about Tomahawks. Then he had the phone call with Putin. He changed his mind, seemingly due to what Putin said. And that's where we still are. Although he has subsequently put heavy sanctions on Russia, which might make you think that actually if he continues to be frustrated by Putin and the lack of progress in peace negotiations, then he could well green light the Tomahawks as well. He certainly has that up his sleeve. So that's where we are at. Let me know what you think. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, and share. That would be really great. And I will see you in my hits and losses video, which will be somewhat delayed today due to football engagements of my children. So I'll be with you a little bit later. Anyway, in the meantime, take care. Speak soon.